Welcome to the Art and Faith Podcast. We have as our guest today, Chad Gundersen, who is part of Out of Order Studios and somebody we are really excited to talk with today. So Chad, thank you so much for being with us.
Jamie, thank you for having me. It's awesome to be here.
Chad, tell me, what is a production company? What's a producer? What do you do?
Well, the running joke has been, and unfortunately it's been a 25-year running joke, that my mom still doesn't know what I do for a living. So that is, I think, still the case. But a production company in our world, in the film, television world, is a company that does that produces things, that produces content, produces television shows, movies, and we have done a little bit of everything. I mean, not that this is something I do on the regular, but I've even produced a game show. We have produced live events. We've produced a lot of things, but our sweet spot, the place that God has definitely called us, is definitely more in the film and television world. So as a production company, that's what we do. Myself and my business partner, Chris June, we own Out of Order Studios, and then we have a handful of pretty amazing people that work along with us. As far as what a producer does, I do think it's an interesting, and it's a question I get asked quite a bit in this industry. Everybody kind of seems to know, obviously, what actors do, and they know what writers they do, and they understand what directors do, and for whatever reason, directors direct, and people know what that means. Writers write, and they know what that means. Actors act. But when you say, well, a producer produces, and then people kind of go, well, what exactly is that? The producer does everything that is there to put what is on that screen, what it takes to put all that together. And when you watch the credits of a movie or whatever, you notice hundreds and hundreds of names in the producer or producers are those responsible for putting those teams together, putting the money together, getting it out there, getting it out to the world. Yeah. And Chris and I like to say that we individually at Out of Order Studios, as producers, we like to create environments. That's what we like to do. We like to create environments for creatives, for directors, so they can shine. And not just for the director either, for everybody, because there's so many artists that work within this industry, from the art department to cinematography to hair and makeup to wardrobe to, again, the list is just long. And that's what we like to do. We like to create those environments where people can just thrive and do their best work. And that gives us a lot of joy.
I've had the opportunity to visit your film set, and I would say that you guys are pretty great at that. One of the things I notice around you is happy people. And in a creative environment, cultures where people are thriving, where people are cheering for each other, they really stand out. So I appreciate the way that you guys create that. Speaking of, before we go further, you got to tell us about this snazzy room that you're sitting in. I know there is a lot of great work in your past. I know there's a lot of great work in your future, but what project are you working on right now, and where are you sitting?
So currently producing the television show, The Chosen. And quite a few people have heard of it. And God is doing a pretty amazing thing with this show. And so this was one of the rooms that we've set up.
I love it. Okay, I have so many things I want to ask you, but I do want to go back just for 1 second to the role of the producer, because there are some unique things about that role. Whether you are in theater and you're a stage manager, or you're in TV and film and you're a producer, or you're just some kind of project manager somewhere in the creative space. All of those jobs share this quality where if you're doing your job well, you make problems invisible. You absorb them and you shield other people from them. That can tend to make the importance of your role somewhat invisible if you're doing it with a lot of generosity and a lot of care for the people around you. So if you were giving advice to somebody starting out in one of those kind of spaces and saying, that is your job, that's the way you want to serve, but also you want to make sure that people can properly assign value to that work. How does one straddle that and deal with that tension?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And it kind of goes back to my description of what a producer does, right? Because people they still don't have this full understanding of what that is. You're definitely not one of those in the limelight, We kind of joke and say, well, nobody wants to talk to the producers. They want to talk to the actors. Producing is an interesting thing, right? First and foremost, there's a lot of producers, right? And you see all these things when you watch credits. There's an executive producer, there's a line producer, there's a co-producer, there's an associate producer, there's the actual producer, there's the produced by. There's all these different things that we do it. And all of those, and you could probably get into you could do a whole thing on just all these different producers and what they do. But some of them, they focus more on like the raising of money. Some of them are more focused on the distribution of it. How does it get out into the world? Some of them are really very specific to just the production, just the day-to-day of it and budgeting and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then there's creative producers as well that work along with the directors, or they find the stories and they do those things. Again, we'll use like hair and makeup, for example. Like what do you need to be able to do your job well? And I think hair and makeup is an interesting one, because the hair and makeup people aren't happy. Well, then maybe the actors don't look great. And then now the actors aren't feeling secure or their best because they don't look the way they should or whatever, or their character should, not necessarily them, but what their character should look like. That's kind of a big part of what we do, is just to kind of go to those places. And we've definitely been described as firefighters. But at the same time, I say all the time, if you see me doing something on set, that means somebody else isn't doing their job.
Yeah.
Because hopefully what I've done is create a team that can do that. Now, again, that goes back to, well, maybe I wasn't able to hire everybody, but if I have to, I'll go get the coffee. I'll go do that. I have no problem.
Yeah. Okay. So here on the Art and Faith podcast, let's talk about how faith has been a part of your journey. When you think about where you are today, do you see, looking backwards, how all the things that seemed like they might not be preparatory, or like they might be side errands, have been contributors to what you know and what you're able to bring to your work now? Is that part of your story?
Never had I ever thought I'd be a producer. I mean, that's probably first and foremost. I mean, I don't think I was a biology major in college, and I was going into sports medicine. That's what I wanted to do. Growing up, I played sports. I played sports in college. And then sports medicine was where I was heading. And so I was a biology major literally all the way up to my senior year of college. I had done theater as an actor. I'd done print work. I had done a couple of commercials here and there, but again, definitely never thought of acting as a professional career. Did it because I enjoyed it and did theater since I was young. And then in college, I do remember actually when I was in California, I was an extra in a couple of pretty big movies out there. And I remember sitting on the set of some of those films kind of going, this is a thing. Like, this is what people do. And of course, I knew that. I loved watching movies growing up. I worked at a movie theater when I was in high school. Like when I was 15 and 16-year-old, it was one of my first jobs. I was working in a movie theater. I was a projectionist, so I was kind of around it and knew of it, but again, never really thought of it as a career. And so then when God really kind of had to slap me, because I definitely was like, nah, that's not what I'm supposed to do. Like that doesn't make sense, and I come from small town Texas, north of Fort Worth, about, half hour, 45 minutes. And nobody in small town Texas is out making movies and doing those kinds of things. So it really, even if the dream was there, it didn't make sense. Right. And again, the dream really wasn't there. But I can look back and kind of look at the steps and the things that God took me through to get me there. And then, as a producer, when I started producing, and I was early 20s, and I've only ever produced. Like I never did anything else. I didn't work my way up as a cameraman or as a grip or worked in some sort of department. I literally have only ever produced. I've never known anything different.
Yeah.
And I tell people I know enough about everybody's job to know whether they're doing a good job or not, but I couldn't do their job. Like, don't give me the camera. Don't tell me where to put the light. You have to be really specific if you want to know where the light goes, because I don't know where it goes. But I know how to watch and go, that individual's great. She's amazing at what she's doing. He's doing an amazing job. That is something that I have over the years figured out. And then, of course, comes the thing of the types of projects that come, and what can you do and what do you get offered?
Yeah.
And there are multiple stories of getting an offer to do something. And as a young married individual, the wife and I, we sat down and we're like, I can't with a clear conscience do this. And it's easy to say that in practice, and it's easy to say that as a believer, but when your bills are on the line, then what do you do? What decisions do you make? And then you really find out where your faith is within that. And it's like, all right, Lord, if you called me and I believe you did, then I'm not going to be left out in the cold. I'm not going to be left wanting. Not to say that it hasn't been hard, not to say that my wife and I haven't had those moments, but we've always stayed true, and now the ability to do something like The Chosen and other projects that we're doing, I obviously would never have had it any other way.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Five Talents Fund is glad to bring you the Art and Faith podcast. At Five Talents Fund, we make good things go further, faster. One of the things that makes me really hopeful is how beautifully you guys have been able to present the Gospels, the life of Christ, the life of his followers, and the excellence of the storytelling element of that it's letting us see through a fresh lens. I feel like that's creating imagination in other people for how stories can be told from a perspective of faith. Are you hearing that from a lot of people?
Well, everybody talks about that. Well, 50 years ago, almost 100 years ago, all the best films in Hollywood were faith-based, right? Whether it's Ten Commandments or Veil, or again, pick the grandiose biblical epic of old Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
And then somewhere along the way, we kind of relinquish that as believers. And now all of a sudden you are starting to see this swing probably in the last 15, 20 years, which I consider myself very blessed and fortunate to be around during this swing. And that's happening. But now you have this struggle between Hollywood proper, we'll call it, and then the faith community. And then even within that faith community, the quote unquote creatives or filmmakers or again, whatever term you want to use within the faith community fighting with Hollywood. And I say that meaning things like, well, something quote unquote faith-based comes out of Hollywood. We all see it, right? We as creatives, we see it. And we're like, that is so not right. Like they did this. And it may look cool and it may look great or whatever, but then we as believers were mad, right? Because it's not biblically accurate. That's not how believers act. It's not any of those things. And then, of course, we find out, well, the director was literally the most anti-Christian. And even in interviews, he came out and said, this is probably the most biblical story ever told. Like you hear these types of things. And then we get all mad, right?
Yeah.
But then on the flip of that, you talk to people in Hollywood, and I'm sure you know this as well, that you talk to people in Hollywood that kind of, the gatekeepers of the industry. And they're like, well, there are no good filmmakers in the faith space. And a lot of filmmakers say, well, God called me to do this, and this is what I'm going to do. And so therefore, I'm just going to do it. And I don't care if I don't have the money or the expertise or the know-how or whatever it is, but God called me to do it, and therefore I'm going to do it. And I'm not in agreement with that at all, right? I mean, my Bible says do all things in excellence. My Bible says study to show yourself approved. My Bible says that God built the temple in the Old Testament and found the best laborers on the globe and brought them to this place and built this amazing place. And God all the time knew this is going to get destroyed eventually, but I want the best creatives. For whatever reason, in the film community, there's always kind of been this, it's okay. God's blessed. God's going to bless it. It's not very good. It's not very well made, but God's going to bless it. And that's just, and so therefore Hollywood continues to kind of give us the stiff arm. And then we continue to be mad at Hollywood because they won't give us money. And they're like, why would we give you money? You're not good at what you do.
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of on us, a lot of it. The Bible is such an amazing source material. We could make content forever and ever. And never run out of amazing stories.
It's a thing that takes quite a bit of faith when the budgets need to be what they often need to be to do something at a level of excellence. I think that's part of what creates the just the poor quality. I'm encouraged. Right. I think there is a hunger. I think you're so right that there really are tons of people waiting to be activated. And sometimes waiting is a good thing. Sometimes it lets us prepare and just be ready in the quiet, steward things in the quiet for the right moment. But I have a lot of faith that that this is going to shift, that our stories
Agreed.
are meant to be told on screens, and that that just the glory of the Lord and the beauty of who he is and what we're called to carry into culture is going to come onto screens more and more in our lifetime. It's something I'm really excited and hopeful and prayerful about. And I'm glad for how
Could
you
not
guys
agree
are
more.
leading the way there.
Yeah, could not agree more. And I think The Chosen is a very unique one within that, because we are funded by the masses. We are funded by our amazing audience. And so we started very, very small. And obviously we're about to enter season 4 and our budgets have grown. But then it also becomes, well, we want to continue to bless those that are part of it. We have hundreds of people that work on the show and we want to be a blessing to them. I want to say,
Absolutely.
look, a workman is worth his wages,
Yes.
right? And the amazing actors and crew and all the different people behind the show, they are worth their wages, and they are worth it because they are impacting the globe on a very real way with the show. So
Yeah. Yeah. And nobody wants to see this be a one and done. Everybody wants to see this be a platform that other creatives and other stories can jump
yep,
off, and these workers can continue to work in this same area. I think that your point about being a donor is really well made, and this is where our organization's kind of shared DNA. This is why we're called Five Talents Fund. We believe in being
right,
multipliers. We believe in
yep,
identifying multipliers. We believe in identifying projects that can be multipliers. And I love how you guys have the loaves and fishes in your DNA that's telling that
right.
same story.
Well, and it is a biblical thing, right? I mean, that is
Yeah.
something that we do have to keep in mind, that and Hollywood is confused by what we're doing, and I think they're going to be
Yeah.
confused by what you do as well. They're kind of
Yep.
going, wait a minute. So the show is free and
Right.
people give you money, but yet you're making money, but it's free. So how do
Right.
you make money? Because the money you make isn't all from donate. Like, it is a conundrum to them. And we as
Yeah.
believers, we're like, well, it's kind of that whole
It's how
seed
we
time
roll.
harvest, and like we have, tithing and offerings and tenfold, and like the list goes on and on, as we as believers, that what God has shown and proven through his word and proven over time about sowing and reaping and giving and doing those things. For us, it's like, well, this is how it should have always worked, right? And so it is a confusing thing to them. And then you have to start making decisions of going, okay, because now people are knocking at the door going, hey, I want to be a part of what you're doing there. And then the decision. But the good thing is, quote unquote, we hold the cards now. We hold the what are we going to do and what aren't we going to do, versus we're beholden to the man
Yeah.
of what
Right.
we've been, given or loaned or whatever
Yeah.
the case is. And so yeah, no, we definitely are. I know this is Dallas's heart, and it's our heart that we kind of laugh now, and we're just like, okay, please, Lord, don't let us screw this up. Like, whatever you're doing, and however this impossible math,
Mm-hmm.
as Dallas likes to say, the impossible math that's happening,
Yeah.
however you're doing, whatever you're doing, and whatever reason you're doing it, don't let us screw it up. We're obviously very blessed, very excited, and want to continue to do this.
Yeah.
And we want to continue to sharpen our tools and our skills to get better at it. But at the same time, it's just like, I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it, and we'll just hold on. We'll hold on for the ride.
For sure. Yeah. I'm reading in Genesis right now, and it's just so much a reminder of God's character and how he's factored in our stupidity already, which I take tremendous comfort in that. It's just like train wreck
He knows
after
exactly
train
how
wreck.
dumb we are. Yes, he knows exactly.
And he's not stopped by it. He probably is like face palming from time to time, but his
Right,
purposes move forward. And so, yeah, it is good just to be on the ride with him. Hey, okay, whenever I tell people that we even serve people in the film space and the TV space, and maybe I even have ever met a human that works in the film and the TV space, a couple of things always come up, a couple of questions. So let me get your take on these, because I think listeners are just dying to ask this question.
Love it. Love it. Let's do it.
Chad, I want to be an actor. How do I get to act? How do I get cast in something? What's the answer?
Right. Do theater is my first answer.
Okay.
I run into actors, and again, I was an actor for a long time. And for whatever reason, especially in film and television, it's just like, well, I can't get in any movies. I can't get in any television. I'm like, there is a local theater on every corner. And I get excited when I meet people in theater, because it shows a true desire that I love to perform. And it's a gift that God has given me. I think it's the best way to continue to learn a craft, to get in a character and get out of a character, and to work on the grind of figuring those things out, working with the team. And I get excited when I audition people for a film or a television, and I look at their resume and I see this big slew of theater at the bottom. I'm like, I'm excited.
Yeah. What are a couple of your favorite shows in the theater world?
Oh, in theater world, I have an affinity for things that I've done as an actor.
Yeah.
So I mean, some of the stuff like I did quite a bit of Shakespeare. So Shakespeare in the Park, growing up, I did a lot of those. Taming of the Shrew, and some of those were kind of some of my favorites, and I played some weird characters in those. Moon over Buffalo was a big one that I did that I kind of have an affinity for. And then from there, I mean, golly, there was like Rent. I remember Rent hit me hard when it came out. I was in college when that came out, and I can't remember how many times I saw it, but I just loved it, and sing it, and do all those things. Even though I am not a musical theater individual. I enjoy musical theater, but I am not. I never did musical theater because I cannot sing.
Okay, what about people who want to do something besides acting? They want to work with a camera. Maybe they want to try telling stories, developing scripts. You know, you're in your 20s and you're thinking, I just want to get on a film set and
Right.
learn. Is that possible?
Obviously you can go the school route, so going into college and stuff like that. There's a lot of trade schools out there now, things like Full Sail and some of these others that are very specific. Like if you want to actual shoot like from a cinematography, director of photography, camera operating perspective, then going to school and doing those types of things at that highest level will definitely be needed. And so I'm not a proponent or an opposer of school. I think it's unique to the individual, because I would say that there's probably plenty of people in this industry that don't have any schooling in it, and there are some that have schooling at the highest level, and there isn't a rhyme or reason of who's excelled above the other.
Yeah.
And I've seen that many times, so I don't think that necessarily matters. I think what matters for them, because normally when you meet the person that went to school, you're like, I totally see why you went to school for filmmaking, and then you meet others and you're like, yep, I can see how you've made it in this industry without being in school. And so I don't think there's a right or wrong way of that. But you know, as far as getting on things, I think searching your local film commission websites. So we're in the Dallas Fort Worth area. If you just search Dallas Fort Worth Film Commission, the site will pop up, and you'd be amazed how many like job postings. And obviously, if you're starting out, go start as a PA, right? Production assistant. It's kind of the bottom of the rung. But it kind of comes into that, go pay your dues, right? Go just get on set and be on set. It's all about connections. It's just meeting people and knowing people. I mean, and you are one of the absolute best at this, about just networking and meeting people and understanding and having the desire to fulfill somebody else's needs versus what can you do for me?
Yeah.
When I met you, you have this amazing desire to serve others. That's where your heart is, right? And honestly, that's why even if I want to say no to Jamie, I can't. Like it's just like it's just but it's what your heart is. It's who you are as an individual. And I think if that could translate, and there's a lot of pieces, but I think that's one individual piece of going, how can I serve you? Right? Not give me a job. What can I do for that project that can help? Like I tell this story, and this lady has worked with me. Her name is Jenna, and she has been on multiple films, and she has worked all over the film industry, from an actor to a driver to craft services to PAs to whatever. But Jenna just has this desire to serve, and she is just the epitome. And I just love this. She's an amazing woman. She's worked with me almost on every project, unless she's off working on something else. Like I just can't tell her no, because she's just such a giving heart. But how I met Jenna, we were shooting a movie in Waxahachie, Texas, out on this farm, like out in the middle of nowhere. Oddly enough, quite a few movies have actually been made in Waxahachie. We're in Midlothian, which is the next town over. We were shooting a movie down there, and we were on this farm. It was a movie called Hoovie, Patrick Warburton, Lauren Holly, great little true story movie about high school basketball. And this family lived on a farm. And so we were shooting on this farm, and I don't even know how the word got out, but like for whatever reason, whether it was the production design or the wranglers or whatever, we needed chickens. Like we didn't have chickens in the scene. There were supposed to be chickens in the scene. And I'm not joking. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, Jenna shows up with 2 chickens under her arms, like just shows up on set and she goes, I heard you needed some chickens. And I'm just sitting there kind of going, I'm like, this is either the weirdest thing and we need to have you arrested, or you're a complete genius.
Yeah.
And Jenna is a genius. Like that's
I
what she
love
is.
that.
And so she had heard about our show. She was kind of just there hanging around. People know her in the industry, but she was not hired onto our show. And when she brought those chickens, I don't remember who I turned to, probably my production manager or whoever. And I just said, I don't know who she is, but hire that woman. And now we've had this working relationship for like a decade. But it was that her desire just to serve. Like there was no ego there. It was the humility of going, I got your chickens. Like, here you go. Where do you need it? And now it's just like, I tell my team, I'm like, I don't know where Jenna needs to work, but find a place. Right. And sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's not. But again, that goes back to, she just didn't take no for an answer, but her heart was about serving, not about Chad, give me a job. I can get you chickens if you give me a job. It's here's the chickens.
Right.
And now you have a job.
That is a fantastic story. I'm never going to forget that. You know,
that is great.
I think for me, it was like a feed my sheep kind of a thing because I love music so much. And I really wanted to be Amy Grant when I grew up, but I just wasn't quite good enough, you know? And it really took me a little bit of wrestling with the Lord to figure out what to do with that. And just sitting with him, he was like, if you really think art is so important, if you really think that everything in culture is downstream from art and like this is where the gospel can go, I'll give you a space there, but it's not going to be the one that you decided on. If you love it, will you serve it? I'm
right.
Like, yes, so I will. Yeah. And that really began to change things. And so, I think we all have to have that. I think it's super interesting that you weren't trying to be a producer.
It's a tough thing, but yet at the same time, we do recognize how blessed and fortunate we are to do it. And then to do something that is impacting the world, you know, and impacting the world for the Lord is, again, that kind of takes you back to that humbling side of it as well. So, but it's interesting. Just like you, like I said, I did not grow up with the dream of being a Hollywood producer. That was not it.
We hope you're enjoying the Art and Faith podcast brought to you by Five Talents Fund. Okay, so I have been trying to learn about the film industry this year. In my pursuit of understanding it better, I started reading scripts. Reading scripts of films that haven't been made, reading scripts of films that I really love, and then going back and looking at what did that script look like. And I didn't know this, but there's just not a lot on the page. There's so much that happens in the film that either is understood by the scriptwriter and the director or just gets created in the moment. How do you know a good script when you see one?
Right. Well, the saying is you can make a bad movie out of a good script, but you can't make a good movie out of a bad script. So it really starts there. It starts on the page. And as you know now, it is an art form. It's a very unique process on writing scripts and what to put in there and what not. And there are definitely varying stages of a script, right? There are shooting scripts that get done where a director is putting notes and screen direction and stuff like that. Normally it's just scribbled on the side. But at the end of the day, it's definitely more of a show it, don't say it type of world, right? In a novel, right? When you're reading a book, it is, well, and he sat and then he shifted his weight to the left and he pondered for a moment and he thought to himself, it is detailed, and he hasn't even said anything yet, right? But and if you're reading a movie script, it's he sat on the bench and thought. Like that's it. Like and it's just screen direction. It's just telling you what he did. And then it's up to that director to bring his interpretation. It's up to the cinematographer to bring his interpretation. Is it nighttime? Is it daytime? Is it sunny? Is it not? Is it bright? Is it dreamy? Is it, all these things?
Yeah.
And then the production designer and what does it look like and feel like? And then the actor is going to come in at the very last minute and go, okay, I have this thought. He's actually going to sit this way instead of, and so it is constant changing. But that's the process. And that's why this industry, it's kind of this massive creative mixing pot that you never know, right? And to your point, you literally could take the exact same script and give it to two different directors and you would get two very, very different films. Okay,
last question. So you've made a game show, apparently. We'll have to talk about that at some point. You've made different kinds of film projects. You've done some acting. You're involved in this biblical narrative now. What do you want to do?
it's tough for me because I think a lot of people, they do kind of get within genres and they do that. And to be honest with you, I kind of dig them all. Like, and I've said that before. I loved making the game show and I'd make another game show. That's not really my thing. It's not, but it was such a cool experience of creating that. Chris, my business partner, he comes from a very big animation and visual effects background. So we're having a lot of talks about animated projects and visual effects driven projects, which is exciting and cool to itself. But it's kind of like you want to just kind of go, like, I made a Western, like I want to make another Western, like, and I want to, there's certain, I think, quote unquote, horror films that you could do within the faith space. I mean, there's some scary stuff in the Bible, and how would you do that in a respectful biblical way, but at the same time go, it's kind of cool and kind of scary and people dig that stuff, I'm a big fan of the epics, things like Gladiator or Braveheart or these types of things, these big epic type films. But I would love to see some more kind of Lord of the Rings. I think about books like Pilgrim's Progress, right? Obviously one of the oldest best-selling books of all time, and it's never been done, and it's very allegorical and Lord of the Ringsy and Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe-y. So I think those types of epics would be kind of fun. It's weird. Like, I don't have a genre and I don't necessarily have a desire of doing one thing over another. I'll do a Hallmark movie if I like it. If it sounds cool, I'll do a Hallmark movie. So don't, get mad at me for it, but it'll be the best Hallmark movie you've ever seen.
Ever. Yeah. It sounds like you just want to tell good stories.
That's it. Yeah, that's exactly right. I love telling stories, and I love, again, it goes back to that. I love creating environments to do so. So
yeah. Love that. Well, we could talk all day, but I want to thank you for the time that you've given and for the things that you shared. I think this is going to be really fun for people to hear. It's just a great experience to just get a little peek behind the scenes and look into the world that you guys are living there. Thank you for sharing with us, and thank you for what you're doing. We pray God will continue to bless The Chosen and bless you and Chris as you guys go about your work. Thank you so much, Chad Gundersen of Out of Order Studios, for being with us today.